The arena was alive with noise, a storm of alien voices echoing off the high metal walls. Lights burned down from above, bright and merciless, showing the circle of sand where warriors fought to the death. The audience was not human. Their eyes glowed in strange colors, their bodies shaped with horns, scales, and wings. They roared for blood. And in the middle of this deadly arena, one human stood alone. He was young, no more than 20. His armor was cracked, his breath heavy. His name was not known to the aliens, only whispered as the human. Compared to the towering alien fighters, he looked weak, fragile, out of place. His hands shook, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. Around him, the crowd jeered and laughed. "The human will not last a minute," they cried. "He will fall with the first strike." To them, he was nothing more than prey. Soft skin, brittle bones. A creature meant to kneel before stronger races. But then, the air changed. From the far gate of the arena, armored guards marched in with glowing banners. Behind them came a figure dressed in silver robes. She walked with grace, her face hidden by a crystal mask. The crowd lowered their voices in respect. This was the alien princess, heir to the throne, symbol of power. Her seat was high above, guarded by soldiers, yet close enough that all could see her watching eyes. The human lifted his head and saw her. For a moment, their eyes met his, full of exhaustion and defiance. Hers cold, curious, perhaps even bored. To her, he was just another fighter about to die. Then, without warning, a shadow moved within the arena. From a side door slipped an assassin, cloaked in black armor, carrying a blade that shimmered like fire. He was not part of the games. He moved too fast, too silent, heading not toward the human, but toward the royal seat. The crowd gasped. Guards were too far. The princess had no weapon in her hand. The assassin's blade raised high, ready to strike down the royal bloodline in one flash of light. And in that single heartbeat, the human moved. He did not think. He did not weigh the risk. His body threw itself forward, crossing the sand like lightning. With a shout, he slammed into the assassin, the burning blade slicing the air just inches from the princess's chest. Sparks flew as the weapon struck stone instead of flesh. The alien crowd cried out, half in shock, half in fury. The assassin turned, furious. His glowing eyes locked on the human who dared to interfere. With a growl, he slashed the blade again. The human ducked, the heat of the weapon burning the edge of his hair. He stumbled, but did not fall. His fists tightened, and though he carried no great weapon, he raised his broken spear like it was enough. The arena froze. Even the princess stared, her cold mask cracking into surprise. A fragile human had stepped between death and royalty. No one had expected it. Not the audience, not the guards, not even the human himself. The assassin struck again. The human blocked with the shaft of his spear, wood meeting energy. The weapon shattered, but for one brief instant, it held. His arms shook, his muscles screamed, but he forced the blade back with pure will. The assassin hissed, anger rising. He circled the human like a predator around prey. "You are nothing," his voice growled, echoing like thunder. "You cannot stop me." The human spat blood onto the sand, his chest heaving. He had no armor worth saving him, no weapon worth winning with. But his voice did not break. "Maybe I am nothing," he said, steady and sharp, "but today, nothing stands in your way." The crowd roared at the madness. Aliens who had mocked him now leaned forward, shocked by his defiance. Some cheered, others cursed. But all eyes were locked on the human who dared to fight a killer armed with nothing but courage. The assassin lunged again, blades screaming through the air. The human twisted, rolling across the sand. The blade struck sparks where he had been. The assassin snarled, chasing, striking again and again, but the human refused to fall. Every dodge, every desperate block, every ragged breath pulled him further into the fight. The princess watched closely now. Her cold eyes softened as she saw something no alien warrior had ever shown her: a will that did not break. Fragile though he was, the human stood firm in the storm. At last, the assassin raised his blade high for the killing strike. The human, bleeding and gasping, planted his feet in the sand. His broken spear was gone. His fists were empty. Still, he lifted his chin and glared into the assassin's eyes. And at that final moment, just as the blade began to fall, the world seemed to hold its breath. The hook ends here, the assassin's weapon hanging in the air, the human's fate hanging by a thread, and the princess staring at him as if for the first time. The assassin's blade crashed downward with deadly force. The human twisted his body at the last possible second, the glowing edge slicing into the sand where his chest had been. Heat seared across his arm, burning the skin, but he did not stop. He grabbed a handful of sand and hurled it into the assassin's face. The assassin staggered, snarling in rage as the grains blinded his eyes. The human did not wait. He lunged forward, using his shoulder like a battering ram, slamming into the assassin's chest. The alien stumbled back, surprised not by strength, but by the sheer recklessness of the move. The human had no weapon, no armor, but he fought like a cornered wolf. The crowd erupted. Gasps and shouts filled the arena. They had expected a quick death. Instead, they saw a fragile being using clever tricks, instincts, and desperation. The human circled his enemy, eyes sharp, searching for any weakness. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but inside, his mind was calm. He knew he would not outmatch this assassin with power, but perhaps with timing. The assassin wiped the sand from his eyes and roared. His blade whirled, sending arcs of firelight across the arena. The human darted aside, the heat brushing his skin. He dove, rolled, and grabbed a broken piece of stone from the ground. It was no weapon, just a shard. But in his hand, it was enough. The assassin charged. The human sidestepped at the last moment and drove the shard into the alien's thigh. Not deep, not fatal, but enough to make the assassin stumble with pain. The crowd howled. Never had they seen a human wound one of their feared killers. The assassin's fury grew. His attacks wild now, but the human stayed calm, his movements sharp and quick. He ducked, dodged, used the arena itself to survive kicking sand, weaving between broken pillars, forcing the assassin to waste strength. Every second he stayed alive was a victory. High above, the princess leaned forward in her seat. Her cold mask of disinterest was gone. She watched every move with growing wonder. Here was a creature the aliens had mocked as weak, yet he fought with a will fiercer than most trained warriors. She whispered to herself, though none could hear, "Why does he not give up?" The assassin, furious and humiliated, decided to end the fight in one strike. He raised his blade high, energy pulsing along its edge. The human knew he had only one chance. As the blade came down, he dropped low, sliding across the sand beneath the assassin's swing. His hand shot up, clutching the stone shard, and drove it into the assassin's exposed side. The assassin screamed, stumbling backward, clutching the wound. The blade flickered, its light dimming as blood stained the sand. The human stood, chest heaving, face pale, but eyes still locked on his enemy. He had drawn real blood from a killer who had expected an easy victory. The arena fell into silence. Thousands of alien eyes watched the human, not with laughter now, but with awe and confusion. The assassin staggered, his strength fading, and tried one final lunge. The human braced himself. At the last second, he sidestepped and pushed with all his weight. The assassin, weakened by his wounds, stumbled into the broken pillar beside them. The glowing blade struck stone, sparking violently. The energy surged backward, and in an instant, the assassin fell. The weapon slipping from his grasp, the human stood over the fallen figure. Chest burning with pain, arms shaking, but alive. The crowd exploded in roars, not mockery, but wild, thunderous noise. Some shouted in disbelief, others in admiration. Against all odds, the human had not only survived, but defeated a trained assassin. The princess rose to her feet, her eyes fixed on the human. She had expected to witness a meaningless death. Instead, she had seen bravery beyond reason, a stubbornness that no alien warrior had shown. In that moment, something inside her shifted. Guards rushed in, dragging the assassin's broken body away. But the human did not celebrate. He simply stood, bloody and exhausted, staring up at the princess. He did not bow, did not kneel, did not seek favor. He only breathed heavily, as if daring the universe itself to take another strike at him. The princess's voice rang out across the arena, calm but commanding. "The human has saved me," she declared. "His courage cannot be denied." The audience froze. Her words carried power. They carried law. The assassin's attack had not only been on her life, but on her throne. And the one who stopped it was a human. Whispers spread like fire. Some called it impossible. Some called it dishonor. Others began to cheer. But no matter what they thought, one truth was clear. The human had done what none expected. He had saved the princess, and though he did not yet understand, his life and hers would never be the same again. The arena still shook with the sound of voices. Some cheered, some hissed with anger, but all spoke of one thing: the human. The fragile outsider who had defied death, who had stopped an assassin's blade. Who had stood between the royal bloodline and doomed guards surrounded the princess now, forming a wall of armor and weapons. Yet her eyes never left the human. She studied him the way one studies a puzzle, something impossible yet undeniable. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. His arm burned from the assassin's blade, but his stance remained firm. He was not on his knees. He was not begging. He stood tall, though his body trembled. The counselors rushed forward, robed figures with jeweled masks, their voices sharp and filled with outrage. "This is against tradition," one cried. "A human cannot interfere in royal matters." Another shouted. They pointed at him as if he were a disease. He must be punished. He must be erased before shame spreads further. The crowd roared in agreement, a wave of fury threatening to drown the moment. To them, humans were weak. To let one claim honor was an insult to every alien warrior who had ever shed blood in the arena. But then the princess raised her hand, and silence fell like a blade. Her voice was steady, clear, and unshaken. "No," she said. "He saved my life." The words struck harder than steel. In her people's law, in the ancient codes carved into stone long before she was born, there was one rule that could not be broken. If royal blood was saved, the savior was owed a sacred life. The law did not care if the savior was strong or weak, alien or human. Honor was absolute. The counselors froze. Some gasped, others shook their heads in disbelief. One stammered, "You cannot mean I mean what the law demands," the princess interrupted. Her eyes glowed beneath her mask, her voice carrying across the arena so that no ear could pretend not to hear. "From this day, my life belongs to him. Until his last breath, I am bound to the human." The arena erupted in chaos. Some shouted in rage, others cheered wildly, but none could deny the truth. The sacred law was spoken. The bond was sealed. The human blinked in confusion. He did not understand their words, not fully. The language was strange, filled with tones and echoes, but the meaning reached him through the translator embedded in his. Caller, life debt, bound, princess. His heart pounded as the reality sank in. He had saved her life, and now, somehow, it tied her fate to his. The princess stepped down from her seat, her robes trailing like liquid silver. The guards moved to stop her, but she waved them aside. With slow, deliberate steps, she crossed the sand until she stood before the human. He looked smaller than the legends of her people, but in his eyes she saw something fierce. Something rare. She lowered her head, not fully, but enough to shock every witness. Royals did not bow to anyone. By the sacred law, she said, her voice steady, I am yours to protect, and I am bound to your survival. As long as you live, so do I. The human swallowed hard. He did not want this. He had not asked for it. He only acted to stop the assassin, nothing more. Yet here stood the princess of a mighty empire, declaring before all that her life was tied to his. The counselors hissed their disapproval. This is madness. One shouted, he is a human. He cannot carry such a bond. Another raised a fist. Break the law for the sake of reason. But the princess turned on them with fire in her eyes. Would you break the oldest code of our people? Would you spit upon the very foundation of honor? Her words cut deep. None dared answer. To defy the life debt was to defy the gods themselves. Still, the whispers spread quickly. Many hated the thought. To them, the human was still a fragile, unworthy creature. But some voices in the crowd were softer, filled with awe. They had seen his courage, his will to stand when any other would fall. Perhaps there was something more to this human, after all. The human staggered slightly, the wounds on his arm burning. The princess noticed and called for healers. At her command, alien medics rushed forward with glowing instruments. The human tried to push them away, but she raised a hand. Do not resist. You are under my protection now. The crowd gasped again. Protection. The word carried weight. From this moment, any hand raised against the human would be raised against her. And no one, not even the council, could strike at the heir to the throne. As the healers worked, the human stared at the princess, still dazed. He did not understand her world, her people, her rules. But he understood one thing. He was no longer alone. For reasons beyond his control, his fate was tied to hers. And in the shadows of the arena, unseen by most, other eyes watched with rage. The assassin's clan would not forgive this humiliation. The human had not only wounded their brother, but stolen their honor. They would not rest until blood washed away the debt. The princess turned to the human once more. Her voice low enough only he could hear. You may not know what you have done, but you have bound me. And in binding me, you have bound yourself to war. The human said nothing. His breath was heavy, his wounds still raw. But deep inside, something stirred, a spark of resolve, a fire that would not go out. Whatever this debt meant, whatever this war brought, he would not turn away. For the first time, the princess looked at him, not with doubt, but with something else, respect, and perhaps the beginning of trust. The arena was silent now, emptied of the roaring crowd. Only echoes remained, whispers fading into the cold night air. Guards escorted the princess back to the palace, while the human walked under heavy watch, his wounds wrapped in glowing cloth. He felt like a prisoner, though they called him a savior. The halls of the alien palace were vast and strange. Walls glimmered with crystal veins, pulsing with light like living creatures. Statues of old kings stared down with hollow eyes. Everywhere he walked, alien eyes followed him. Some curious, some filled with disgust. He could feel the weight of their stares pressing on his back. To them, he was an intruder who did not belong. But in the shadows, deeper than the crystal light could reach, darker eyes burned. The Assassin's clan had not fled with their fallen brother. They had melted into the hidden corners of the city, swearing vengeance. Their honor had been broken, their blood shamed. To them, only the human's death could wash it clean. That very night, the first attempt came. The human slept in a chamber smaller than a cell, but guarded by 2 alien soldiers. His body was weak, his dreams filled with fire and blades. Suddenly, a faint hiss slid through the air, the sound of poison gas leaking through the cracks in the door. His lungs burned, his eyes stung. He coughed awake, stumbling toward the door. But the guards outside were already collapsing, gasping for breath. He grabbed the water bowl from his bedside and smashed it against the wall. The sharp shard of crystal he pulled free was pressed against the door seal. With shaking hands, he jammed the shard into the crack, blocking the hiss. The gas slowed, but smoke still filled the room. Then the door burst open. A shadow rushed in. Twin daggers glowing with deadly green light. The Assassin's clan had come for him. The human stumbled back, his vision blurred. His hand tightened around the crystal shard. It was no weapon, but it was all he had. The first strike came fast. He ducked the daggers slicing through his shoulder instead of his throat. Pain seared his body, but adrenaline drove him forward. He slammed his shard into the attacker's arm. The alien howled, stumbling, and for a second, the human thought he might survive. But the second assassin slipped in behind him. The blade was ready. The strike aimed at his back until a sudden flash of silver cut. Through the room, the princess, she had come with her own guards. And her blade of light carved across the assassin's chest. The figure crumpled instantly, blood spilling into the smoke. The second one fled, vanishing into the night. The human collapsed to his knees, coughing, his shoulder bleeding. The princess knelt beside him, her hands steady, even as her eyes flickered with something sharp fear. "They will not stop," she whispered. "You have taken their honor. They will hunt you until nothing remains." The human laughed weakly, a sound more bitter than amused. "Story of my life," he said through ragged breaths. "Someone's always trying to kill me." Her gaze lingered on him, searching. She could not understand how someone so fragile still spoke with such fire. "You are under my protection," she said finally, "and I will not allow them to touch you again." But outside, in the hidden alleys of the alien city, the clan gathered. They spoke in hushed, violent tones, planning more ways to end the human's life. Poison had failed. Knives had failed. But shadows are patient. They would strike again and again until his blood ran across the palace steps. Days passed, but peace never returned. At meals, the human found his drink replaced with black liquid, bitter with toxins. At night, blades were found hidden beneath his bedding. Once, a guard tried to lead him down a wrong corridor, a trap waiting at the end. Each time, the princess's protection saved him. Each time, her guards pulled him from death. But with each attempt, the human felt the walls of the palace closing tighter. He was not a guest. He was a target, a curse that dragged danger wherever he walked. And yet, in those dangerous nights, something else began to grow. The princess visited him often, sometimes to warn him, sometimes to question him. She asked about humans, about Earth, about why he fought as he did. His answers were simple, spoken without pride. "Because giving up is not an option," he told her once. "Even if I fall, I fight until the last breath." Those words stayed with her, echoing louder than the council's endless protests. She had lived her life surrounded by warriors, but none carried that strange, stubborn fire. Still, the enemy in the shadows was not finished. One evening, as the sun set in crimson light across the alien towers, a message reached the clan. Their leader, draped in dark armor, spoke only for words. It is time again. And in the palace, the human felt a chill crawl down his spine. Somewhere in the silence, he knew eyes were watching. The war against him had only just begun. The palace was never quiet. Its walls hummed with power. Its guards marched in endless rhythm, and its counselors argued in voices sharp as blades. Yet inside a smaller chamber, hidden away from the great halls, silence ruled. It was here the human spent most of his days now, recovering from wounds, watched by guards, visited by the princess. At first, her visits were formal. She stood tall, her silver robes flowing, speaking words that carried weight. She asked if he was healing, if the assassins had left him in peace, if he understood the danger he had brought upon himself. The human answered simply, without bowing or ceremony. His tone was plain, sometimes even careless, but always honest. Over time, her questions changed. She no longer asked only about danger. Instead, she began to ask about him. What is Earth? She asked one evening as the twin moons glowed outside the window. Home, he said softly. It's blue skies, green trees, oceans that never end. It's noisy cities and quiet places where no one bothers you. It's not perfect, but it's where we fight to keep going. She tilted her head, studying him. You speak of it like a wound and a dream both. He smiled faintly. That's exactly what it is. The princess had lived her entire life in halls of crystal and steel, bound by duty and rules older than memory. She could not imagine a world so free, so wild, where people built their own path instead of following bloodlines. Yet when the human spoke, she felt something stir, a longing for a life beyond walls. Their conversations grew longer. She asked about human families, about their wars, about why they fought when they were so fragile. He answered with stories, not of great victories, but of ordinary people. Farmers who worked through storms, mothers who sacrificed for children, soldiers who stood their ground even when outnumbered. Humans, he said one night, we're not the strongest, not the fastest. But we endure. We break and we heal. We fall and we rise again. That's what makes us. The princess listened in silence. No alien warrior had ever spoken of weakness without shame. Yet this human spoke of it as if it were the very source of strength. Still, shadows lingered. Each day, whispers grew louder in the council halls. They called the bond between princess and human a disgrace, a chain that dishonored the throne. Some demanded the law be bent, the life debt erased. But the princess stood firm. Every time the debate rose, she silenced it with the same words. The law is sacred. But behind closed doors, she wondered. Did the human even understand what he had bound himself to? Did he realize that his survival now meant her survival too? If he fell, she would fall. If he bled, her throne bled with him. One night, as the wind howled across the palace towers, she found him training. His wounds had not fully healed, but he moved in silence, his body sharp with focus. He had no great weapon, only a wooden staff, but every strike, every block was practiced with determination. Why do you train so hard? She asked from the doorway. He looked up, sweat dripping down his face, his chest heaving. Because they won't stop. And I won't be the reason you die. Her breath caught. For a moment, she saw not a fragile creature, but a warrior forged in fire. Not because he was strong, but because he refused to give up. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, trust became something else, something unspoken, something fragile yet powerful. She began to walk beside him in the gardens, where alien flowers bloomed in colors no human eye had ever seen. He taught her human jokes, strange little stories that made her laugh despite herself. She taught him alien phrases, watching with amusement as he stumbled through the sounds. In those quiet moments, the bond between them grew deeper than law. It was not just a life debt anymore. It was something shared, something chosen, but danger never truly left. One evening, as they walked together beneath the glowing trees of the royal garden, the human felt it again, that sharp prickle along his spine. That instinct born from years of surviving where he did not belong. He turned quickly, eyes scanning the shadows. Nothing moved. No sound broke the air, yet he knew. The assassins were still watching, waiting. He gripped the staff at his side, his voice low. They're still out there, and they won't stop until one of us is gone. The princess looked at him, her eyes steady, her voice unshaken. Then let them come. They will learn what it means to face a human who does not break. For the first time, he saw not just a royal figure bound by duty, but a partner, someone willing to stand beside him, not above him, and in that shared silence beneath the alien stars. A bond beyond worlds was born. The palace glowed with light that night, brighter than ever before. Music echoed in the grand halls, and banners of silver and gold fluttered from the ceilings. It was a night of celebration, the day of honor, when the royal family stood before the people to show their strength. But under the glittering walls, beneath the laughter and song, danger was already crawling. The human stood at the edge of the ceremony hall, dressed in armor polished until it shone, though it felt strange on his shoulders. He was no royal guard, no warrior of their kind, yet tonight he was placed near the princess herself. Whispers followed him wherever he walked. Some eyes burned with hatred, others with awe. He ignored them all. His gaze stayed sharp, scanning every corner, every shadow. The princess entered, her silver robes trailing like a river of light. The crowd bowed as one, the sound of their voices rising in praise. She lifted her head with calm grace, but her eyes flicked toward the human, as if silently asking if he was ready. He gave a small nod. He always was. Yet behind the polished masks of the counselors, betrayal was taking shape. Among them sat one who had grown weary of the human, weary of the life debt, weary of the chaos it brought. His loyalty had been sold to the assassin clan, bought with promises of power. And tonight, his betrayal would open the gates of death. The ceremony began. Speeches filled the air, words of loyalty, honor, and tradition. The princess spoke too, her voice steady, declaring the strength of her people and the importance of law. When she said, "And I honor the life debt that binds me to the human who saved me," the crowd erupted with mixed voices, cheers of respect, shouts of rage. It was in that moment the trap was sprung. The counselor raised his hand in false salute, and the great doors at the far end of the hall burst open. Figures cloaked in black stormed inside, blades glowing with deadly fire. The assassin clan. Their leader stood at the front, taller than the rest, his weapon longer, brighter, deadlier. His armor was painted with the blood-red marks of vengeance. His voice cut through the hall like a storm. Tonight, he roared, "The shame of my clan ends. The human dies, and with him, the false honor he stole." Panic swept through the hall. Nobles screamed. Guards rushed forward, but the assassins moved with deadly speed, cutting down anyone in their path. The princess was pulled back by her guards, but the human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the killers. His heart pounded, but his eyes were steady. The leader's blade slashed through the air, the heat so strong it cracked the marble floor. The human barely blocked with a fallen spear, the force driving him to his knees. Pain ripped through his arms, but he pushed back, forcing himself upright. The assassins circled him, blades flashing. Every strike was faster, stronger than before. His body screamed in protest, his wounds reopening, but his will did not break. He dodged, rolled, grabbed broken weapons from the ground, and turned them into shields. Each second he stayed alive was another second for the princess to escape. But she did not run from behind him. Her voice rang out. "You will not face them alone." She stepped forward, her blade igniting in silver fire. Her guards tried to hold her back, but she cut free, standing at his side. For a moment, the assassins themselves hesitated. Princess and human, back to back, defying them together. The leader snarled and charged. His blade met the princess's, sparks exploding in the air. The human struck at his side, forcing the assassin to twist. Together, their strikes pushed him back, though his strength was far greater. Each clash shook the hall. Each blow stronger than the last, but betrayal cut deeper than blades, as the fight raged. The traitor counselor slipped behind the throne. From his robes, he drew a hidden weapon, a dart coated in black poison. His eyes burned with greed as he aimed not at the human, but at the princess. The human caught the movement in the corner of his eye. Without thinking, he threw himself sideways, slamming into the princess just as the dart flew. It grazed his side, burning like fire, and his body shuddered as the poison spread. He fell to one knee, vision blurring. The assassin leader saw his chance and raised his blade high for the final strike. The princess screamed his name, her voice breaking through the chaos. But the human forced himself to stand, his hands empty, his body weak, yet his eyes blazing with fire. "No more running," he whispered, with the last of his strength. He caught the assassin's blade in his bare hands. The heat scorched his flesh, but he held it fast, refusing to let go. The princess struck then, her silver fire cutting deep into the assassin's chest. The leader staggered, his blade faltering. Together, human and princess drove him down. The assassin leader fell, crashing to the marble floor, his blade dimming to nothing. The hall went silent. Smoke rose, blood stained the floor. And the assassins who survived fled into the night. The human collapsed, his body racked with poison, his hands burned raw. The princess caught him before he struck the ground, her arms trembling as she held him. "You saved me again," she whispered, her voice breaking. "And now you bleed because of me." But the human only managed a weak smile. "Better me than you." And then his eyes closed, his body limp in her arms. As the palace trembled with the weight of betrayal and blood, the hall was silent after the battle, broken only by the faint crackle of fading energy blades and the slow drip of blood across the marble floor. The assassins were gone, their leader slain, their shadows scattered. Yet victory felt hollow, for the human lay limp in the princess's arms, his chest rising only in shallow, trembling breaths. His skin was pale. His hands blistered and raw from holding the assassin's burning blade. Poison from the dart pulsed through his veins, turning each breath into agony. The princess pressed her hand against his wound, her eyes blazing with fear and fury. "Bring the healers," she cried. Her voice thundered through the ruined hall. Guards and medics rushed in, kneeling beside the fallen human. Strange instruments glowed, liquids poured into his veins, but nothing seemed enough. The poison was old, crafted in secret by the assassin clan, a venom designed to burn life away slowly. Mercilessly, the princess refused to let him go. She gripped his hand tightly, whispering words only he could hear. "You will not leave me. Do you hear me? You are bound to me, and I will not let you fall." The counselors gathered at a distance, their faces pale behind jeweled masks. Some murmured of honor, some of shame, but none dared speak too loudly. The law was clear. He had saved her not once, but twice. By their own traditions, his name would be carved into history. Yet still, many hated the truth. A human, fragile and strange, had done what none of them could. The human stirred faintly, his lips moving. His voice was cracked, faint as a dying flame. "Why are you crying?" The princess blinked, realizing tears stained her cheeks. Royals did not cry. She was heir to a throne, trained to hide weakness. And yet she could not stop. "Because you gave everything," she whispered. "Because you bleed for a people who mocked you." He gave a weak smile. "Humans, we're stubborn. We fight even when we shouldn't. We fight because someone has to stand." The words struck her heart. She had seen warriors stronger, faster, more skilled than him. But none carried the spirit, this fire that burned even as his body failed. For the first time in her life, she understood why his kind endured. The healers worked endlessly, pouring light and medicine into him. Hours passed. The poison did not vanish, but slowly his breathing steadied. His chest still heaved with effort, but he lived. Against all odds, once again, he endured. When dawn broke, the princess stood before her people in the great square. The human, weak but alive, leaned on her side. The crowd gathered, whispers rippling like waves. Some still cursed him. Some still doubted. But many, for the first time, bowed their heads in respect. The princess raised her hand for silence. Her voice carried across the square, steady as stone. "Twice this human has stood between me and death. Twice he has faced blades meant to end me. He fought not because of power, not because of law, but because of will. He is fragile, yet unbroken. Weak, yet unyielding. He has shown us what true strength means." She turned, her eyes meeting his. "And I say this before all. His courage is greater than any blade." The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some shouted in anger, but the truth had been spoken. The sacred law bound her words. From this day forward, his name would be remembered, not as prey, not as weak, but as the human who defied death for a princess that night. When the halls were quiet again, the human sat beside her in the garden of glowing trees. His wounds still ached, but his spirit burned as fiercely as ever. The princess watched him in silence, then asked softly, "Why do you keep fighting, even when it nearly kills you?" He looked up at the alien stars, his voice calm. "Because if we give up, we've already lost. On Earth, we fight storms, hunger, wars, and still we go on. That's what it means to be human. Not to be strongest, but to keep standing no matter what." The princess's eyes softened. She had lived her life surrounded by warriors, but none had taught her this truth. For the first time, she felt not just honor, but something deeper. A bond forged not by law, but by choice. She placed her hand over his, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You saved my life. But perhaps you have also taken my heart." The human froze, surprised by her words, but said nothing. Instead, he gave a quiet smile, one filled with both pain and warmth. The night stretched long, the stars burning bright. And for the first time since the debt was made, silence felt safe. Far away, the assassin clan still lived. The shadows still plotted. But for now, in that garden beneath alien skies, a fragile human and an alien princess sat together, no longer divided by race, by law, or by fear. They were bound not just by a sacred life debt, but by something stronger, by trust, by respect, by something beyond words. And so, the human legacy began, not written in power, not in bloodlines, but in the unbreakable fire of will.